All right. Well, welcome to the show. Let me get this clip right. Get this right. Aramis Ayala joins the conversation today. Florida's very first state attorney, elected about 5 or 6 years ago, and is we able to catch up with you today. How you doing, Professor?
Hey, Professor. I am doing good, Paul. It's good to be here. Things are good, although it is cold in Orlando.
Man, you just thank God you in Orlando because I'm in where I'm at right now. It's 23 degrees.
Oh dear. Oh dear. Yeah, my brother sent me a message and where he was, it was 11. So I'm going to take my little 40, 50 degrees and I'm going to be good.
Yeah. We'll take that. We'll take that. I wanted to talk to you today about the Voting Rights Act that is pending, and I know it has a couple different names, but I know you've been on top of this, and this is one of your expertise. What are some of the things in this bill that you feel is important to the Black community or the community abroad?
So there's so much, and unfortunately, we do a poor job of explaining it to people so that they can understand it at a level that impacts them directly. It has two different names because one is in the House and the other is in the Senate. So when you're talking about the House bill, you're talking about the Freedom to Vote Act. And that was passed, and that had a lot of different opportunities that were going to help us. The other one is the John Lewis Voting Advancement Right Act. I'm sorry, the John Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act. And that was the Senate one. That was the uproar that we saw a few days ago when it did not pass in the United States Senate, because had it passed, it would have been passing in both houses. And then we would have seen it signed ultimately by the president to go into action. What is important for people to understand is that when it comes to the Senate portion of it, the John Lewis bill, that was not just for today. If we remember the Voting Rights of 1965, it was named after John Lewis because you remember he was the one who was beaten when they were down marching in Selma. And then ultimately at that time, Lyndon B. Johnson was the president. They started, signed, and put in action the Voting Rights Act of 1965. He bled for that. He lived for that. So his name was assigned to it. And what that said is that the federal government had oversight of any state changes. So here in Florida, there, wherever you are across the country, if your state is historically known for discriminatory conduct when it comes to voting rights, the federal government has to approve basically whatever changes that you make. So when they start saying, Georgia, we're not going to give people water, we're not going to make these, when we're making changes, it has to go through the Department of Justice at a federal level to be approved. That's the basis of the John Lewis. Now, the other side, the House is what was offering all of the things that people are talking about. That's the meat of it, where you would have seen opportunities to have early voting in every state, where there would have been federal standards for voter identification. It would have been federal standards for, whether or not they're cracking down on different types of intimidation and things that happen at the polls. We would have been able to restore federal voting rights automatically for formerly incarcerated people, automatically, if that would have passed. We're looking at mail-in voting, looking at automatic registration for certain states and for everyone would have been an option to be able to have it. And then basically even options for online registration and same day registration. So that's the meat of the House bill. The meat of the Senate bill, which just failed, was that the federal government would have oversight whenever there were changes in the state.
Wow, and that I guess the Senate don't want that side, don't want the federal government involved with state elections.
Well, you can imagine. Look here in Florida. What would happen if, DeSantis is trying to say we can't have early voting anymore? What if he shortens the amount of, voting locations and precincts in places where people don't get off work until 5, 6 o'clock? When he makes those changes, guess what? It has to go through the federal government's approval. And what do you think our current president, President Biden, would do? He better be concerned about the issues of voting. And then ultimately the DOJ may strike it down because of the people he has appointed to the DOJ. So you're looking at, they don't want a babysitter when they're trying to oppress people and limit and suppress the vote.
Why do you think the Republicans would be against this then? Because I'm sure they want everyone to vote. wouldn't they?
You gotta, it's all about power. I started this conversation by talking about this all being historical. This Voting Rights Act is not 2022. This Voting Rights Act starts from the history of this country, leads up to the Voting Rights of 1965, and it led us here today. So whenever you're thinking about the reactions that Republicans have, it is quite often a result of the history of this country, which is oppression of Black, brown, and poor people, which is the perpetuation and the protection of their power and their rights to oversee people and to get done what they want done, which is the protection of their power, their money, and everything that they have in this country. And when you start seeing more people vote, that's when you see the changes. And when you look at how many people and the voter turnout, even when President Barack Obama, you're seeing, historical amounts of people coming out. Whenever you see in certain elections, oh, we've never had a woman, we've never had, an African American, we've never had a Latino, we've never had, a person of LGBTQ community, we've never had these things. Then you get people coming out in droves in numbers that they can't control. So as long as they can control who is registered, they can control who turns out, and then ultimately they can control the outcome of an election.
Do you think eventually this will get passed?
So I think that what is important is for people to understand that it may have to be passed piecemeal, right? So, if a person is elected to Congress and chooses to pass an individual vote for every state to have, election day, making it a holiday, that may be a start. That is a part of what the House bill is. Another option may be where we're going to make certain that formerly incarcerated people have their right automatically restored upon the release of their incarceration. So it may happen at piecemeal, but I do believe that there are enough people in this country who are tired, who are sick and tired of being sick and tired of being oppressed and left out, and their voice is not heard. So I'm believing in it. I believe in the American people, and I believe that this fight is not over.
Vincent Payne said the oppression is already too visible. We don't need the feds with all the power to the people. All right.
I completely agree. The federal government is extremely powerful, but when the states end up having a power fight with the federal, then you're in a different issue. This is not necessarily about federal having more power over the people, because under the United States Constitution, whatever rights the government gives us, the state may give us more rights, but they can't take rights away. That is a constitutional limitation. So if we're trying to give the federal government more power to give us more rights, then that protects us from the state. So it's not a battle between the people and the federal government. It becomes a battle between Biden and DeSantis.
Well, now we hear a lot about the term filibuster. Could the Democrats go ahead and debate this thing into the Republicans are tired and then go to a vote?
I mean, absolutely. They can. That's what everyone's fighting for, is the filibuster. And I think ultimately that's what you want to do. But I want to take a quick turn here from that, because what we keep focusing on the legislature, we keep focusing, that's what's getting the news. But what we don't realize is that in July of 2021, there was a United States Supreme Court case that set us up for all of this. It was a case, I think it's Brnovich, it's spelled Brnovich versus Democratic National Committee. That case was decided by the United States Supreme Court, and it took the chief judge in that case specifically said, just because voters are inconvenienced does not mean that it is unconstitutional, and that a state has a right to inconvenience voters if they can make an argument that they believe fraud is there. And here's the catch: they don't have to ever prove that fraud is even legitimate. So that came out in July of last year. And if you understand that that the United States Supreme Court has ruled that all they have to do is make a claim of fraud, now you start thinking about all the rhetoric we've heard: fraud, 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 fraud. It came from the United States Supreme Court, bled into the legislature, and then ultimately, I believe, impacted the outcome.
Wow. Okay, if you don't mind, let's go back to with the Democrats, what they can do right now, and because I'm not a political expert when it comes down to how bills get passed, but I do know the Republicans can debate it, and they got to continue to debate it before it go to a vote. I believe that's how things are done, and they can hold it up for days by debating. Can do you think the Democrats could possibly out debate them and just sit there and for days to get this done?
It's a numbers game. And that's why people like it's really a numbers game. So, yes, they can continue to debate it. That's an option. But does that mean it's going to get done? I do not believe it's going to get done right now. And that is because of the numbers game. Now, if you have people who are Democrats voting against the very rights that they needed to take their seat in the legislature, I think we're climbing an uphill battle without the wind behind our back. So you're in the position where we have to find a way to break it down, like I said, and then end up introducing different aspects of legislation so that we still get to the same mark. Because, making it a national holiday, let's start there, right? Making certain that, you're able to provide data of the outcome and the lack of voter fraud that is associated with early voting, things of that nature. If you're able to support that bit by bit, it may have a different impact because you may be able to tack it on to another bill, right, where it's not all in the face. There are different ways that I think we have to be mindful about it. I think also one of the things that we have to be very clear is that putting people in Congress and the United States Senate who don't have baggage make it a whole lot easier to expose the other side's baggage. It is a power game. And when you're able to get the information that then can curb how other people are influenced on their vote because of their personal interest to keep their personal lives out of it, I think you'd start changing the game that way. So we have to have electable people who have integrity and who don't have the distractions that others may ultimately have to get it in our way. It has to be clean.
Former state attorney Aramis Ayala in Orlando, Florida. What are you doing now since you chose not to run for re-election?
So I chose not to run for re-election, but I thought that it was important to support my successor, who is Monique Worrell, building upon the reforms and doing some really, really good work in the community. But most importantly to me, not breaking down the things that I did, which I think if someone else would have run the election, they would be erasing them. So the first thing was to make certain I supported my successor. The second thing is I took a full-time position. I am a tenure track professor at the University of Central Florida in the Legal Studies Department. I teach, I write, publish, and doing a lot of work in the area of death penalty. We're doing some work in domestic violence. And of course, now we'll start doing a lot of talking on voting rights and things of that nature. I have also launched a campaign for United States Congress for Florida's District 10. I'm excited about the ability to do this, understanding that, it's somebody who needs to hit the ground running with, like I said, integrity, somebody who understands the system, but most importantly, somebody who understands the people and the needs of the people. No matter how they try to draw these lines, the needs of the people don't change. People need to have affordable housing. People need to have health care. People need to be able to take care of their families. People need to have legitimate jobs. People need to understand that the police need to be checked and understand what police reform looks like. And you're not going to have another candidate in this race who is as committed and proven with regard to criminal justice reform.
Right. How do you feel as a country? How you feel we're at? Where are we at in regards to criminal justice reform?
We're still talking. I think that it has to require people who are going to do it in the face of all the controversy, in the face of the pushback, being willing to recognize a system that is unbiased. And a system that is biased and unfair and move forward anyway. It's going to take people who are literally willing to put their lives on the line and keep moving forward for the people at all times and at all costs to make the change. If you have a personal interest in this and you are in a position of leadership, it is not going to be the change that we need. It has to be a sacrificial individual who understands, who is competent, who is able to be taken seriously, and who can actually do the work. So I believe that we are in a place where we need to do more. When I say do more, we need to challenge more, because Black and brown people, we've sat down, we've moved forward, we've negotiated, we've given our last one, and you have prosecutors and police and our government system not moving at all, constantly move towards me, and that's not going to work. We got to make certain people aren't being shot, people aren't being stopped unnecessarily, because the more encounters with police tend to be more dangerous for Black people, and that certainly concerns me. So we're at a place where we need more people on the ground doing the work, on their platforms speaking, but also on the grind working.
one more comment here. Vincent Payne said the people just need to stand up and treat voting with more respect than they have been treating the whole process of registering and actually getting out to vote. What are your thoughts on that?
Point on, Vincent. I could not have someone said it better. The reality is we have got to respect this right. If there was a man by the name of John Lewis who was beaten nearly to death for the right to vote, how dare we consider it something that is not even important enough to get up and register? So when we think about us ain't enough. We're not enough. When to just me and my family go out, we have got to do it, because the only thing that beats voter suppression is voter registration and voter turnout. That's how we overcome this.
Wow. Former state attorney, Aramis Ayala, how can people connect with you? You got a website? I know.
Absolutely. Sure AramisAyala.com. That's AramisAyala.com. Reach out to me, and I would love to help figure out how we can get more people in this community registered.
All right. All right. Thanks for being available. I got to get you back on more often with your expertise. And you inside the classroom, right? You are in
the classroom. I lecture tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock.
Wow. I got another comment before we take off. It's like a big sister of mine. Connie Nasberry said, Attorney Ayala, thank you so much for all you do. When you say we need more people on the ground, please give specific actions that people can take to help.
Take a group of people. Like, number one, there are organizations out there who are lacking people who are going door to door. Find the people at your work. Are you registered? Get on your Facebook. Are you registered? What is stopping you from registering? And reminding people that their vote counts, because if it didn't count, they wouldn't be working as hard to suppress it. So it really is just about you grabbing 10 people that spiderweb all the way out to thousands of people. So start small with what you have. Nothing is too small. When they talk about a mustard seed of faith, you can also have a mustard seed of action that will grow exponentially.
Wow. Should the Democrats be protesting these two Democrats, or should they also be protesting those 50 Republicans?
All of them, because we can't sit here and say we want a democratic process. I don't care whether you're a Democrat by party or Republican. This country claims to be built on a democratic process. And I promise to be one of those people who's going to hold it to that promise. We will function as a democracy. So we should be protesting anybody who does not support the right to vote, access to vote, and understanding that we need to eliminate this history, this dark history we have in this country.
All right. Thank you for being available. We'll be having you back real soon. Say hello to David for me.
I promise I will. Thanks so much.
All right. Take care.
All right. Keep doing what you're doing.
All right. Thanks. Yeah.